Hello, Professor Sanford. This is my presentation for Activist for Social Change for Psychology 368 for summer 22. I chose Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I believe she was a pioneer for women's rights. She was a member of the Supreme Court, a staunch supporter of women's rights, and an advocate for social justice. RBG was truly a champion to both men and women. Sadly, she passed away on September 18th, 2020, at the age of 87. RBG knew what it was to experience discrimination when it comes to equal rights for women. She experienced this firsthand in society and the workplace. For example, while her mother instilled a love for education, it was her brother that went to college, foregoing Ruth's own personal education. Only for a while, though. RBG later attended Cornell and earned her bachelor's degree. She then attended Harvard from 1956 to 1958, where she ultimately transferred to Columbia University, where she graduated in 1959. It was at Harvard that she experienced gender-based harassment by the highest authorities, claiming she took a man's spot. Even after graduating, she still found it hard to secure a job, regardless of being a law school graduate, because she was a woman. Remember, it was a time when men exceeded and women were still very oppressed. Even after graduating, she still found it hard to secure a job. Once she was even bribed for sex in exchange for higher marks in school. We see these stereotypes still today. They've been around for millennia, and unfortunately today we see them in women trying to obtain jobs where men and women are equally of the same experience, maybe have the same degrees, have the same level of education, and unfortunately we see the white male getting the job. The good news is that RBG went on to be a professor of law at Rutgers, and beginning in 1963 to 1972, she taught mainly civil procedure, and she also ultimately received tenure in 1969. RBG was also general counsel for the ACLU, Women's Right Project, all of which define her career, or would come to define her career, as a Supreme Court justice. In 1980, Justice Ginsburg joined the D.C. the Circuit Court of Appeals, where she served until 1993. She was then appointed by President Bill Clinton to the Supreme Courts. She was the second woman at the time. Some of RBG's accomplishments include helping pave the way for state-funded schools who admitted women. She paved the way for the ECOA, which is the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which allowed for women to apply for credit without a male co-signer, because as we remember in history, only male, white humans were allowed to vote and buy property and get an education, right? It wasn't until, years after colonization that only white women then started to get an education. So I also believe she helped make strides in equal pay for women. Her presence on the court preserved a woman's right to choose, which we just saw 2 weeks ago, unfortunately. And she was also a key vote in making same-sex marriage legal. I believe she made it cool to be a hardworking leader. She was a superwoman, in my opinion. RBG went on to argue 6 cases in the High Court. In Weinberger versus Weisenfeld in 1975, Ruth argued the Social Security policy was discriminatory against men. This is where RBG really paved the way for terminology as gender when referring to the sex of an individual. I read in my material that her secretary told her it could be distracting to male justices if she used the words female and male, in which she started using the word gender. What an important society-changing antidote. Today, we use the word gender to avoid discrimination. She was truly a trailblazer. Also, RBG was concerned about the balance in the court. She was concerned about the 5-4 opinions as the court had begun to be more politically charged over the years, obviously throughout her career. And the justices were almost still entirely men. Further, she stressed the importance of unification, which we can see now we're falling apart. It would be argued her concern was justified, right? I still believe this today. 2 weeks ago, nearly 50 years after Roe versus Wade, in 1973, the Supreme Court overturned Roe in 2022. Never did I imagine I would see that. Ever since I've been born, which is in 1974, abortion has been a very personal choice for women. And minors, think of what we've seen this last week in that poor little girl. I believe had RBG still been alive, we would have seen a very different outcome. I would say that we, women, are heading backward in our fight for our rights. I believe RBG worked within the boundaries of the matrix of oppression. We can see this was her superpower, her ability to fight for both men and women's rights, regardless of gender, class, or race, to break the glass ceilings, to fight for justice. I leave you with a couple of quotes from RBG. Justices continue to think and can change. As we see in our psychology class, I am ever hopeful that if the court has a blind spot today, its eyes will be open tomorrow. One can hope. Also, when contemplated in its extreme, almost any power looks dangerous. I hope everybody takes care and is doing well, and thank you for listening.